Hello and welcome back to Love at First Right. I am Victoria Doherty, and I am a historical thriller writer, mostly of Cold War espionage, and a personal essay writer, and a vlogger and a blogger who is endeavoring to write this epic series that is full of romance and adventure and thrills and history and archaeology. It's sort of like Dr. Zhivago meets Indiana Jones with a touch of young adult Outlander thrown in, if that makes any sense. And that's actually the way it's been described to me. Not necessarily the way I would describe it, but I think I have to give it some credence since it came from the outside. This week, I really want to talk about precision because I had this really interesting conversation with a woman I've known for a long time, although not very well. We were at the gym, right? We're on the treadmill next to each other, um, and we started talking about precision in language. Now, I should say both of us are teachers, or at least I was a teacher. I'm no longer a teacher, but I did teach elementary school for some years. And this woman has been a teacher forever, and she has taught, high school and above, and now I believe teaches adults. But we were talking about how we feel that there has been a decline, a precipitous decline in precision in language and in writing skills over the past couple of decades. I was telling her about how I was at an event at the Virginia Festival of the Book some years ago, and Daniel Jones, who is the editor of the New York Times Modern Love column, was there, and I was there to support him in this book because I really liked the guy. I'd written a Modern Love column a couple of years back, and he'd been just really good to me and had given me such great advice and had really started me writing personal essays. And he was talking about how he had opened up his Modern Love column to young people. That he had really did an outreach to college age kids because he wanted to know what they were going through, what dating was like, what love was like for that age group. And what surprised him even more than the content of what they were, the content of their love stories and their struggles with love, but how poorly they expressed themselves, how lousy their sentence structure was, and how they just were unable to be clear about what they were saying. And I think that most of these kids were in university, and many of them were probably at elite universities, even Ivy League schools. And so this was just a huge surprise to him, that they were expressing themselves so poorly. And so this woman and I were talking about how diagramming sentences had been a perhaps unpleasant part, but a very big part of our learning grammar. And that, we were raised in an era where our teachers were sticklers about grammar. And I mean, I went to Catholic parochial schools and I have no idea what they're like now, but back then, I mean, we spent a lot of time diagramming sentences to the chagrin of most of my classmates. And the one thing, though, that it did, apart from, bore us to tears, was teach us how to write a really clear sentence. And, back when I was growing up, if you graduated from a Catholic parochial school, you knew how to write a sentence. You knew how to write a clear sentence, and it was grammatically correct. Perhaps you weren't a great writer, but you were a clear one. And that has sort of fallen apart. And then we sort of got into a larger discussion about how we suspect that lack of precision in language has really made its way into the culture at large and created a lot of mischief, because we have lost common definitions of values. We have lost common definitions of words, because we have become so vague and so mealy-mouthed, at least in part. I mean, certainly there are a lot of variables to, the decline in civility, for instance. But I think part of it does have to do with the fact that we are now arguing over very sort of simple, basic definitions that had been a part of who we are for a very long time indeed. And that this whole sort of my truth has seeped into the culture at large. There is a my truth, and somehow that truth is separate from an established truth and a scientific truth, an objective truth. And that it has become very messy, and that it has also crept its way into fiction. And we talked about how many books we've read that make no sense whatsoever, and they sort of evaporate because they don't have, they end up not having anything really to say. And and I had this that night, actually, I went out with a writer friend of mine who had also been a teacher, and we were just discussing our manuscripts, and I told her about this conversation, and we were also discussing heroism. I'd written a personal essay some months ago called "Who Are You Calling a Hero?" Right, and it's about sort of how thin the concept of hero has become. And I was really speaking about fiction specifically, but I was saying of how that relates to fiction. But here I think we have so democratized the definition of hero that anyone can be a hero. A tech CEO who is an environmentalist and tweets about environmental causes is a hero because he is raising awareness. Someone who pays child support is a hero. All of these things, which are good things to do, and certainly necessary things uh, for the world at large, for people to behave like decent human beings. But merely being a decent human being is not being a hero. A hero, I think, in in the past, the definition has gone more like this. A hero is someone who does something extraordinary at their own expense for the greater good, risks their life, risks their livelihood, really does something that that causes them great strife. It's something far greater than a hashtag. And I am just a real advocate for bringing that definition of hero back, and also just for bringing precision in language back. I think it is great for the greater culture, and it is also absolutely imperative for great fiction. And as I have been really, just doubling down on edits, because I'm about to send my manuscript off to my editor. I am just on my last edit. Before I do that, I'm really focusing on precision, and I'm making sure that my hero is a very precise hero. That doesn't mean that he's a perfect hero, and my heroine and she. It doesn't mean that they are perfect, but it means that they do extraordinary things for the greater good that are a great personal cost to them. And I'm also being very precise in my villain. I'm of the school that I think a villain should be a very sort of complex tapestry of a person. I think that a really juicy villain is someone who was once a hero or has the potential to be a hero. Um, those, for me, are the most interesting villains, right? I mean, wasn't it? It was Lucifer, who was an angel and then became a fallen angel. He was God's favorite and became the devil. And I find that really, really compelling as a reader and as a writer, exploring that, how that could happen, that someone with all these tremendous qualities could go down such a dark path. And I think that that path also must be a very precise path and a specific path, because if you do not make those connections, your reader is going to read it and say, huh? How did that person do that? How did that happen to them? Why did they just decide to become a villain, when they were a hero? And it is more than just a line of dialogue or two. It's something that has to be built meticulously throughout a story and underscored at every possible turn. And that is the sort of precision that I think needs to be brought to to a piece of fiction. And in my both of the women that I was talking to, both are writers in their own way, and we were talking about going back and really doubling down on our manuscripts and going through chapter by chapter, page by page, word by word, and some um, to make sure that we are being clear, that we are being as concise as possible. It doesn't mean that we are not going to ornament our fiction, and have metaphors and have beautiful descriptions and such, and have paradoxes or conundrums. But it does mean that a great deal of thought needs to be brought to those devices. Otherwise, they fall flat or they become muddled, just as our definitions of something like a hero have become muddled. And I think it has been to our detriment. So that is pretty much it. That's really what I want to talk about today. I won't ornament it any further. So I hope that you've been having a great summer. And now that the summer is over and my kids are back at school, I feel like I'm digging in. So have a great one, and thank you.